Hello, welcome to the lecture Entrepreneurship Education in the Model Sustainable Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship education, yeah, what is it? What's the impact? What can we make out of it? The central question is first, can we actually educate entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship of being self or looking for self-employment, creating your own company, creating opportunities, transforming those opportunities into business. Is that educatable? Can we really transfer that? It's a very difficult discipline because it's rather unclear and very fuzzy what entrepreneurship education is about. As I will show, we can show some effects. Yes, we can certainly increase entrepreneurial intention from students and from others when we do entrepreneurship education. We can transfer knowledge, we can transfer skills. But what would be a lie is that entrepreneurship education makes you an entrepreneur. Many more things play a role before you become an entrepreneur. That's you, your personality, your background, your socialization, your personal characteristics, the opportunity to do so, the peers, the network, the environment you are in. So there are so many factors that affect your own decision becoming an entrepreneur that entrepreneurship education is only one. But it is maybe the one making you aware that self-employment or acting as an entrepreneur in a team is something for you, that makes you aware of the way you might go instead of being employed at corporates or public administrations. We have done a lot of education with many other institutions, only a few, and a lot of educational programs on entrepreneurship were developed as leading programs in Europe at the European Institute of Innovation and Technology that are the leading entrepreneurial universities. At the moment we are a part of ENHANCE, the European University Network of Technology Alliance, also with partners with technical universities where we again develop entrepreneurship education. So there is a long-lasting history of developing educational programs. And what are the learnings out of maybe 15, for me, more than 20 years of experience? One learning clearly is that pure practitioners do not really much help in entrepreneurship education. You have to see entrepreneurship education as a kind of field for exercising, for trial and error, for making things wrong, for creating business ideas that are unworkable, for making mistakes, for making failures. That's what we do in entrepreneurship education. We are looking at the process of development, how you as a student develop skills, knowledge, things you would need as entrepreneur. Not that you are perfect, that your created business model or business plan is perfect. Practitioners more or less solely orientate at outcome. Is this business, what you create in an exercise, really workable? Is it profitable? And that's not what we do. So we are carefully employing practitioners in entrepreneurship education, but we are also cautious in them making decisions about entrepreneurial educational outcomes, because it's a difficult thing. We are not outcome oriented, we are process oriented. We want to make you entrepreneurs, maybe, but at least we want you that you're an entrepreneurial expert. That does not necessarily lead to a success of your business idea, business plan. When we look at let's say how many educators in entrepreneurship education have experience as entrepreneurs, you see there are actually many professors. I myself have experience as an entrepreneur, so it helps, but it is not a necessary precondition. It depends what you tell students, what you want to educate students, and therefore it's not purely practitioners are not the best in entrepreneurship education, but a good and very complementary add-on. And next thing is, entrepreneurship is often seen as being part of business administration. I'm hesitating a bit. I'm myself a sociologist. I see engineers doing entrepreneurship. I see people from science from biology, chemistry doing entrepreneurship. I also see people from business, but also from social sciences doing entrepreneurship. Actually, entrepreneurship is by definition a transdisciplinary subject. We create or we transfer, and in research also we create knowledge that helps people getting into self-employment, starting up new enterprises, transferring ideas into whatever business. That can go from a charity up to a profit-driven enterprise. So that's the whole breadth. And in the beginning, actually, opportunity recognition, finding ideas, teaming up, developing some strategies how to go on with certain inventions, ideas. That's the main focus in a pre-seed stage of every entrepreneur. When you do not have a legal status, you're just starting exploring what you can do with the idea. And in this stage, more topics from social science play an important role. Also, geography, economics, law, many disciplines come in here. So entrepreneurship is certainly no discipline which can be clearly associated with business administration. Business administration comes in later. Normally it's outsourced in the beginning, in seed phases, in when you have a legal status, when you're really acting and working as entrepreneurial business. Before, many other disciplines play a much more important role than business administration. You can also see that here, that's a German Science Foundation picture, how many disciplines are involved in applications for research and entrepreneurship. Commercialization of academic education. That's the case. We have a quite heterogeneous structure in Europe. Some universities, academic institutions actually act as profitable companies, entities. So the students have to pay fees, and for that they get education. It's good for the system, maybe. Universities, academic institutions have some competition among each other. On the other hand side, when you pay, you also expect getting a degree in the end. For entrepreneurship, it has a negative effect. As we actually know from research that being externally incentivized, what you are when you pay for things, you expect some outcome of that. It does not make entrepreneurial ideas and entrepreneurial processes better. Universities that are not based on study fees do not actually create these expectations, and entrepreneurial processes and the entrepreneurial environment is most often much better there without expectations I pay for something than with academic institutions where people pay for education, and in this way also for entrepreneurship education. Making entrepreneurship an academic discipline. I mean, in science we speak more and more about interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity. Actually, entrepreneurship is one discipline that's from a beginning does not define itself as trans or interdisciplinary. It is by definition trans and interdisciplinary, and therefore making it discipline out of it, making also Master of Science programs out of it, as the science program we offer at TU Berlin in Innovation Management, Entrepreneurship and Sustainability. It's a necessary precondition to get even a higher acceptance of a research and practical field entrepreneurship. It's much broader than just incubating startups or getting students, helping students to become entrepreneur. There's also a lot of research needed how to do that and how actually to incubate which services can be offered, what's the best of being on a market, what's the best way of accessing money, financial resources. So make entrepreneurship academic discipline in research, education and in transfer, then it actually has a right place. Aligning learning methods and learning outcomes. That's something, there are many studies and there are many books, but there is a huge variety of things that are suggested outcomes, that are visible outcomes that should be achieved. When we go into that and we look really carefully at what learning methods lead to what learning outcomes, we will see, and we did that in a doctoral thesis where this table is coming from, that the correlations are not that high and sometimes even minus. So that learning outcomes and learning methods and learning outcomes are not necessarily correlate when I go to a sample of 500 different entrepreneurship courses. So there is a lot to do to really structure that and find out what's most effective, what has the highest impact. At the moment, it seems to be that every university, every academic institution does whatever the academic institution wants, or even what the professor at the academic institution does. There is no one actually saying that leads to that, because everyone is using different methods to achieve the same outcomes, or the other way around. What really helps, and what's very well documented in scientific literature, is that multidisciplinarity, multinationality is a key component. Having different perspectives increases tremendously the amount of opportunities recognized and the option and ways to go to get the idea into a business, whatever business that is. And that we strongly focus as well. When we actually design educational programs, we always think about interdisciplinarity, internationality of these programs, that we get that factors in, that is key. It makes you much better having very different perspectives as being monodisciplinary and very limited in the scope of perspectives you can take. One example is a Climate Kick summer school. At the moment we have other summer schools you might participate, but there we ask students before and after this 5-week summer school about their entrepreneurial attitude, about their entrepreneurial attention, many other things. And when you see just the table, you see that entrepreneurial attitude and entrepreneurial intention were significantly increasing. Even if we put it in a regression, you see that entrepreneurial attitude is actually increasing by certain ways, by opinion leaders in entrepreneurship, by student orientation, by presenting role models, and that in a significant way. So actually in 5-week summer school you can achieve a lot among students, at least so far, that they're really seriously thinking about starting up an enterprise. In education it's also important to look at some thoughts or general things behind it that are discussed when we speak about entrepreneurship. That's causation and effectuation. And you might now know that. Do you really plan when you want to achieve something, or do you take what's there? A good example is always an example here, like a fridge. You invite your boyfriend, girlfriend for a dinner. So you have two choices. Either you look in a recipe and you buy exactly what's needed, or you open your fridge and let's assume there's something in it. You take what's in it and you make the best out of it. The second one would be effectuation. The first one would be causation. And that's also what entrepreneurs do, or what every self-employed person does, looking what's there or actually creating that in the causation way. In reality, it will be somewhere in the middle. But of course, when you take it as dimension, it will shift from one to the other side, or the other way around. So both play a role, and both can be taught in education, in exercises, doing it really on a causal way. A leads to B and B leads to C, or we just take everything together as causation approach. Hypes and facts, what you often will encounter in entrepreneurship education are three things. That's design thinking, lean startup, and agile project management. Design thinking is a method in creating new ideas supervised in groups following a certain methodology. It's probably the best proven and over decades developed methodology how to deal with groups and how to really come up with these new ideas. Lean startup was developed later, around a decade ago, which means that you base your idea on hypothesis, and that you test this hypothesis and you develop in iterations, and you are not developing a fully fledged product, that you develop a prototype and you learn in iterations. that makes the startup process much faster. And that's what we also teach in entrepreneurial methodology. And the next is agile. When you are a team, when you start up, agile also works in iterations. So the three things go together, and the three things have to be thought together. First, you have ideas, then you improve the ideas, then you have a business plan, business model, and then you have to organize your enterprise. And that all works, let's say, quite integrated from design thinking, lean startup to HR. There are also other hypes. Don't take that too serious. There's an illness that goes from cats to humans, and normally we don't feel it, but if you are pregnant, it can actually damage the child, your embryo. But it has other effects, as it is shown when mice actually affected, they don't run away from cats. So the risk averse, it goes down. You take every risk, and that also happens for a part in humans. So it is actually shown when you're affected, the chance of becoming an entrepreneur, it's much more likely as when you are not. That's also a fact. Maybe even when we send in some cats into entrepreneurship education class, it's more effective than the education itself. Has never been tested, but that are facts that to show you that entrepreneurship education is only one side. There are many, many things that influence when people start up or not. And there's, of course, many, many shortcomings. As I've shown, learning outcomes, learning methods, how to actually go into the quality of entrepreneurship education is an important theme. We try to research this going into documents, publications, and trying to order that. That is a kind of network of topics as a result. And you see there's a lot to do because entrepreneurship education, it's still a very fussy and broad field. And that you should keep in mind, and you should keep in mind what's the difference between causation and effectuation. Thanks a lot.